Good evening and welcome to the Radical Race Series Round 5, live from Rudskogen in Norway. I am James Parfitt and I'm going to be joined by Ewan O'Leary in the booth once again. We are here at the full circuit. 3.254 kilometres, 2.022 miles and 14 turns of racing. It opened in 20th of May 1990. The new version of this circuit opened in 2012 and is open to the present day. Runs currently the Porsche Carrera Cup Scandinavia, and it did hold the Scandinavian Touring Car Championship and the F4 Danish Championship as well. But tonight it holds the SR10 Radical from the Radical Race Series League. And I think it's time to bring Mr. Ewan O'Leary into the booth. Good evening, Ewan. How are you, buddy?
Good evening. Doing very well as well. Looking forward to what is a new circuit for me, and I'm sure it is for many as well. Never seen this circuit in action before. Not in iRacing, not in real life either. As you just mentioned, not playing host to too many championships, to be honest, but it is a good circuit by the looks of things. It looks like a lot of fun, actually, from what I've seen from some onboard shots earlier in the week of some of the drivers getting some practice at this circuit. It looks like a little bit of fun, actually, so hopefully the racing is good to match as well.
Now, I went round this circuit in the SR10 the other day, and I followed a mate of mine who is driving in another series, because obviously, you know, I don't get out much to do learning of circuits, so I end up basically putting on the driver line and then trying to follow somebody, and he was like, "Take your driver line off, Mr. Parfitt," and I was like, "All right, but if you see me in the barrier, it's because I don't know where I'm going." I got to say, I managed to get down to a 118.5, which, considering these are down in the 115s, I seem quite slow, to be honest. But it was interesting. I think one of the interesting points of it was turn 12. This one here just kind of comes up on you from the middle of nowhere, do you know, and it just kind of appears, and it's like, well, here it is, you've got to try and get through it, and it's easily spun in there, I've got to be honest, because I did it a couple of times. But I think this is the first time I've broadcasted on this circuit as well, and as you say, it's fun to look at. The racing's good. It's got a lot of points of other circuits, like turn 1, the uphill reminds me of Kota. The little bit after this reminds me of Tsukuba, when it runs up from the beginning down through the wiggly bits, where you go round to the right and then go down to through the S's, and then you go left again for the hairpin and right again. So it reminds me of a bit of a couple of other circuits at the same time as its own entity, really. So I think I'm excited about seeing how they get on here tonight.
I'm going to throw another couple of circuits in that it reminds me of as well, just looking purely at the layout, but also a little bit how it actually plays out as well. Oschersleben and Shanghai, it reminds me of a little bit. These sections, turn 1 and 2, you see the sort of 90-degree left-hander at turn 1, you can see that in our track map in the top right, and then it has sort of a long opening wide turn 2 that runs onto the back straight effectively. And into a very interesting turn 3 and 4 section, which takes a lot of commitment as well. That sort of, reminds me of the first couple of corners of Oschersleben, to be honest. A little bit less tight, and you can actually overtake on this circuit as well, which is helpful. It's not a completely horrendously narrow opening section of corners. We will hopefully get through that one with less issues than you generally do at Oschersleben, but it does remind me a little bit, and the last corners as well at 13 and 14, it's sort of like that Shanghai section that kind of opens out onto the back straight. I'm pretty sure that's roughly turn 13 and 14 on that circuit as well, weirdly. It's sort of similar in that respect, but I mean, these drivers have just got to treat it as its own circuit, which of course they will. And I am actually pleasantly surprised by how many have taken up the challenge here, because, as I said last week, I can't imagine that many of these drivers will have even had this circuit downloaded at the start of the week, so fair play to them for, to some of them for investing a little bit of money into this circuit and downloading it as well, and still getting a very nice turnout for this 5th round of the season.
Yeah, my question regarding that now, I don't ever remember purchasing this circuit at all, but I had it anyway, and I was wondering if it came with the free content drop, and it was the actual other circuit that you had to purchase. If anybody can clarify that, I can't remember if this was a free one or not, to be honest with you, and I don't ever remember buying it. But yeah, I had it downloaded, ready to go. And as you say, we've got 17 drivers tonight, so that should be quite interesting to see how they cope with the uphill into turn one. Because it's quite tight, I've got to be honest, once you start getting into that left-hander 90-degree. Rudskogen was free, says Dan Peoples. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that Rob's said as well. So, yeah, I think it was a free one, but it's still not one that people are familiar with. Well, I'd be interested to see how they cope. They all seems to be doing okay, and I generally gauge how they're getting on for the track because of how much incidents I've got up in practice throughout this period of the practice session, and I don't actually have that many in the last few laps. So all in all, they're not doing too badly.
No, it seems that these drivers have been getting accustomed to this. I think what helps a little bit is that this is not one of those circuits that's absolutely lined by grass and gravel everywhere, like we have seen at, for example, at Road Atlanta that we've had already this season, like we're going to have, well, Parfitt's lined by walls, but you get the point. You know, Alton Park, Brands Hatch, those kind of circuits, there's really, especially Nordschleife as well, as we all know, those kind of circuits lined by grass. Now, I know this is not one of those circuits like Paul Ricard where you can literally go anywhere you want. There is some limit to it, but there is also that little bit of leeway for things to go wrong. We've been seeing it a little bit in those opening shots. Particularly, interestingly, on the inside of these corners here, the S's section, running all the way from turn 5 up to turn 8, the sort of longer hairpin. You can see Darrell Taylor just going through it right now. You can just see a little bit of space on the insides and outsides of these corners, just a little bit of breathing space for these drivers, just to get things wrong ever so slightly. You can see it on the outside there, even though you don't really go need to go to the very outside of turn 10, really. You know, there's just that little bit of space, and that might be helping these drivers go up to speed, and it's might be helping keep the incidents down here in practice.
Now that's the thing. If you John summed it up in YouTube perfectly, and I found this when I was driving around this circuit. Pretty much every track and every corner on this, Ewan, is a slowdown if you go off. Now, one of the things I want to look at here is if we can make it on board with Seth Brown, right? So there are slowdowns involved in the S's, and there's one coming round now. Now, that corner that you were talking about initially, where you said at the end of turn 10, not that you were going to run that one. Well, that's good. Obviously, that's not going to help either. But let's pick up, if we can, Dan Webster. Now, going round 10, if you go over this white line here around the outside, that becomes a half a second slowdown, apparently. And not on, and probably, I think, if I remember correctly, an off track for good health. So there are slowdowns all over this circuit, and they have got to be careful, really careful, because I'm expecting, if we see people dropping back, I would expect them to be having slowdowns on them, because this course is not nice for them.
Yeah, I can imagine so. Looking at the way that it's laid out, you can get all four wheels over the white lines in quite a lot of places because of the AstroTurf. It's quite close to a model that I'd like to see pretty much all road circuits adapt, actually, in terms of having that little bit of grass and gravel on the outside to collect you if things do go really wrong, but a little bit of space for leeway. Maybe this circuit had gone a little bit too far, the kind of tarmac route, and maybe it should have a little bit more grass, a little bit closer to some of these corners, particularly through the S's here. It's a lot of AstroTurf, which is all well and good, but I mean, it's not going to stop any race car from running over them. These cars don't like insides of curbs and that kind of thing, and they can absolutely go through here with no problem at all. So maybe it's gone a little bit too far, the tarmac and AstroTurf kind of route, rather than maybe I'd like to see a little bit more grass, but I can totally see why the slowdowns are going to be such a problem here today. And we'll wait to see how difficult overtaking is as well, because if you do get a slowdown, you're going to be dropping a couple of positions, and we're going to, it remains to be seen just how costly a couple of positions really is. It could be no problem at all. It could be really quite hard work.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. There are going to be people with slowdowns. We are just going into quali now. The entrance for the pit lane, you just saw it there on turn 14. Even though there's that bit of a run down the straight, the entrance for the pit lane is actually at the end of turn 14. So instead of turning round 14, they go straight into the pit lane. Now, I'm not necessarily saying anybody is going to need to go into the pit lane due to the fact that obviously they don't need to, because Well, actually, they do today because it's the endurance, isn't it? It's a 20.
Endurance, yeah.
It's a 29-lap endurance. So they are going to have to go into the pit lane, and that entrance can be quite tricky. And John, who summed it up, who was driving around there for another series we cover, basically says going wide anywhere is a slowdown, pretty much. And I think that's one of the things that me and you are going to have to look out for tonight, Ewan, is we're not going to anticipate that they're going slow for any other reason, bar the fact that there's a slowdown on them. And I think that's what we're expecting.
Yeah, we're going to have to remember that, and remember that, because it could get quite confusing from time to time if we see it too often. You'd hope that these drivers have put in, enough practice to be able to avoid that by now, but you never know. You don't know what kind of time people have been able to invest in the week. And indeed in the coming hours to this race. There may well be a couple of drivers really running quite dry at the moment in terms of actual practice. So we'll see about that. And it is going to be a concern in this qualifying session as well. Only 3 attempts, of course, for these drivers. 10 minutes is absolutely fine. You can take your time in this session. It's a long time because it's a short circuit and quite a fast one as well. But you do need to make sure that you stay away from those off tracks and stay away from the slowdowns as well, because it's all the same in qualifying, really. It means an invalidated lap time.
Yeah, that's one of the things they are going to have to look out for, I think. And it is really going to be interesting how they manage that. Do you know what I mean? Because some people with slowdowns will instantly go off the racing line, hit the brakes to get it down. Now, I'm a bit more of, depending where I am on track, I will make a concerted effort to get to like a hairpin, where I can go slow round the hairpin and take that time off, without endangering everybody else around me, right? I'll make a concerted effort to try and take the time off a different way, because you do end up, if for instance you get a 0.5 slowdown, it equates to more like 1.5 seconds by the time you've actually slowed it down. You've taken off the 0.5 and then you've got going again, so you lose a little bit more time. So I try and be a little bit more conservative with my slowdowns, but it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers tonight handle them, and whether or not they go just off the racing line and slow right down to try and get it off as quickly as possible. I think it's going to be a mixed bag tonight of who's doing what. We have got Paul Crabb going to be coming across the line for his opening lap on a 1:16.81. Well, Paul's setting the pace there, Ewan. Not a bad opening lap at all.
Yeah, we know that you need to sort of build it up in these sessions and go faster as you go along. And so it's not a bad place to start. We know that we were in the 1:15s for a best lap time in practice. So that is actually a very good time from Crabb. To only be a second or so away from that already is very impressive indeed. But it's no surprise to see that Simon Edwards is going even quicker. He was dominant in practice. He's top of the championship standings. And it looks like he is going to have the fastest time. He will do with that best time.
1:16.28 there as well. Good evening, everybody, if you are in chat as well. Mike Boussol's just jumped in there. People, thank you very much. Paul LeMay, Phil across the pond, as always, and everybody else. Much love for coming in for this endurance 29-lap race here from Rudskogen with myself and Ewan. Paul Crabb is going quicker again. This could be really tight, I've got a funny feeling the lap times aren't going to be that too far apart, and I'm expecting some shocks, I think. We've got Martina Ward just jumped up into 5th on a 1:17.38. We've got Luke Maxwell doing purples as well. Oh! Just as I said, she was doing so well. I'm so sorry, Martina. Oh, dear. Well, can't really get away with that one, can I?
The curse is striking again, unfortunately. But yeah, especially hurtful, really, in a qualifying session that really does need you to be out there the whole time, really, for your entire 3 laps without making a mistake and just getting quicker as you go along. Can't be affording any mistakes, and certainly can't be affording damage, which I'm pretty sure she'll have after that. As we got a new fastest time up on the board, chopping and changing quite a lot. And he has done by two different new best times in the last 2 minutes, with Dan Webster and Simon Edwards both beating each other, and I'm sure they'll have a rematch on this final lap as well.
Yeah, they will. And I'm interested to see that Luke Maxwell has not got a time on the board yet, and he's done, well, this is basically about 2.5 laps he's done so far, and he hasn't got a time on the board. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully he will be able to get one on the board this time around. We'll try and bring you the entrance here of the pit lane, and you can see just how bad it's going to be here for these drivers. I think this is going to play a massive part as we're just going around the top end of turn 10 before we go rizzing round 11, which is this slight left-hander, then into 12, which comes from the middle of nowhere, and it is just about there. Now, if you have a look here on the left-hand side, the pit lane actually goes in there. Straight ahead of us, that's where the pit lane goes, and they've got to weave all the way round up down the long start-finish straight. So I think the pit lane is going to be vital tonight. I think it's going to be absolutely vital. Oh, Maxwell goes on pole, 1:15.599. Wow, stunning from him. And then we've got George Gonzaga as well. Well, he pulled that one out of the bag, didn't he?
Certainly did, and even though he didn't actually get any times on the board, he was still clearly going quickly and running well. That's all you need, really, but you absolutely need that last time on the board to jump up, as we've just seen. Not sure if Dan Webster or Simon Edwards are going to be able to respond, really. I think they are still... they still do have a lap, I believe. Oh, Simon Edwards doesn't. He's done for the day. Dan Webster, I believe, well, I thought he was done actually with his 3 lap times, so he just wasn't able to improve. That's a big gap though for Maxwell, and a performance that he really did need, because he is quite a few points down in the championship, gained a few back last round, but yeah, he's nearly 90 points behind Simon Edwards now after a really unlucky Hockenheim race.
Yeah, Martina Ward, 2 greens currently, so is going faster. Coming round the final corner. 29 laps is about 40 minutes, says Dan Peoples. So I can't really rely on Dan for maths, Ewan, to be honest. He's not always been right. So we'll take that with a little bit of pinch of salt there as well, because he did make a wonderful boo-boo in Road Atlanta on a race that we were covering, where he was about 13 seconds out on his pit lane time difference. So, you know, take it with a little grain of salt here, but there we go. George Gonzaga coming around again. He's going to be finishing off his 3 laps. Oh, he goes up into 6th. Nice. Stunning lap there as well. Nothing from John McCutchinson.
He is here though, John McCutchinson. I'm surprised about that. Well, clearly he's just a bit late, and this is what we mean. We've been saying earlier on in the season about this slightly later start time. Really helps John McCutchinson actually attend the races. Which is good. And this is a prime example of it, because under the previous format, we would have been about 10 laps into the race now. Whereas we're still in qualifying, even at this time now. So, oh dear, you can tell he's only just jumped into the rig, because he is struggling a little bit. That'll be a slowdown. And he's going to have one chance, I think, after this lap to actually get a time on the board. And he really does need it. Yeah,
he's going to have to. He's coming up round turn, I believe he's on turn 4.
This is turn 10 now. This
is that right under 10? Yeah, 10. Sorry, turn 10, and then he's going to go 11, 12. He hasn't got long to get across the line, mind you.
So no, he'll make it to the line. I don't know if he has to be back to the line by the end of the timer or not.
Yeah.
Because normally it's not a time pressure session, really. You only have 3 laps, and the circuits we go to, you're never really under time pressure. So I do wonder, because if this session does end when the clock kicks 0, then he's not going to make it. But if not, then he is. So let's see if he does or not.
Stopped.
Well, no. So he's starting from the back.
Do you know what though? Right, anybody else, I would worry about that. I'm not really worried about John McCutchinson starting from the back of the field. I've got to be honest, with his pace and his ability, he's generally pretty much up there anyway. So I think from John's point of view, I'm not overly worried about where he is. You know, as I say, he managed to make it, which was a good start. But I'm not worried about him starting at the back. I think he'll still make his way through. So we bring you the results of qualifying very, very shortly and see how they get on for what turns out to be a 29-lap race here this evening at Rudskogen Motorsenter in Norway, with myself and Ewan O'Leary in the booth. So we're just waiting now, coming into the last few seconds. Qualifying is up, so we can bring you the grid of this 29-lap endurance race. Luke Maxwell is in first, Simon Edwards second, Paul Crabb third, Dan Webster in fourth, James Child fifth, George Gonzaga in 6th, Paul Clark 7th, Robert Woodward 8th, Phil Glover 9th, Darrell Taylor 10th, Martina Ward down in 11th with Damien G beside her, Jamie Bird in 13th, David Rolliston 14th, John McCutcheon down in 15th, David Ward, Seth Brown and David Beasley didn't set a time, so I'm wondering if oh yes, they are here. They've just started at the back of the grid. So Seth Brown and David Ward are here, but they've just started at the back. So John McCutcheon, for whatever reason, jumps them. Is that because he actually went out on track?
I guess, well, I thought I'd seen Seth Brown out on track, and I'm sure some of the others did. Maybe I'm not entirely sure.
No.
It could be as simple as a random draw there. I don't really know, but good to see that he is on the grid, and I think he can just almost relax and have a bit of fun. To be honest, with this one, John McCutcheon, I feel like he's going to be taking this round as his drop round, almost whatever happens today. So let's see what does happen.
Yeah, here they go. They are going to be coming down now. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights. And they are green. Luke Maxwell got a bogged down start. Simon Edwards jumped him at the beginning. Paul Crabb is going to do the same. Dan Webster got another absolute flyer. Are they going to make contact? Dan Webster's round. Oh, Mr. Webster has gone round in turn 1, got an absolute barnstorming start, but that's put Simon Edwards 1.28 seconds out in front already, Ewan. And that's not a good start for a man that got an absolute flying start off the line.
Yeah, just very wide on the outside line there of 2 cars all at once, and just took a bit too much speed into turn 1 on those cold tyres. The rear end very loose still, and I'm afraid Dan Webster has found himself with a lot of work to do. He's already behind John McCutcheon, as you can see just how difficult this is on the colder tyres. Paul Crabb from 3rd place just getting a little bit out of shape. Luke Maxwell and James Chow both able to go through, but all of this has allowed Simon Edwards to take the lead here, and it already might be a lead that he doesn't look back from.
Yeah, 2.1 seconds already. I'm wondering if, well, we were talking about with a slowdown there, Mr. Crabb hit that first thing, because he seemed to take quite a lot of curve going up through the S's, and then he instantly pulled over and let the others through. So David Ward and John McCutcheon now up into 11th place. Dan Webster is he gonna maybe nearly saves it there, and he's currently on the outside line on the right hand side there, battling away with David Rolliston. David Ward next in his line. Webster goes through, Rolliston's going to go through as well. I'm wondering if that's going to start the slowdowns off. Martina Ward goes off. John McCutcheon's in the pits, and I'm wondering if he's doing what I've seen John previously do, Ewan, is go into the pits early, get his pit stop out of the way, and he'll come out and not stop at all for the rest of the race.
I think, well, it could be quite a long way to go, actually. I'm not sure if he can make it that far, but we'll see. That's very close between James Child and Paul Crabb. And they've both gotten away without getting a slowdown there, but absolutely the perfect amount of room given by both of them for them not to make contact. It was very close, but they made it through. So, yeah, not entirely sure what John McCutcheon is doing, to be honest, because he is still in the pit lane right now. That's a very, very long stop. Especially supposedly for just a short stop, as that's around James Child from 3rd place.
No! Oh, Jamie Bird. Stay where you are, boys. Stay where you are. Oh, so painful for Child and Bird. Child just lost it. Bird's put too much throttle on, has gone round again. John McCutcheon. Oh, Child's back round again. I'm wondering if he's got a problem in that car. How straight is that car? Pit lane's on the left. Pit lane, no.
Oh, no. Oh, wow, okay.
I'm surprised.
I thought there was damage there.
Yeah,
I thought there was damage, and that was the reason for the spin, actually. But clearly that's not the case, and he's carrying on as Dan Webster continues his recovery. Already up to 7th, though, passing Damien G here, and everybody running wide through turns 3 and 4. It's a wonderful corner, long looping right-hander, really challenging. But Tom Mack on the outside if you get things wrong, with David Rolliston able to use that, but does lose his top 10 place.
Yeah, I think he would have copped a slow down on the outside there as well. It is, as I say, very slow down dependent. We've got Damien G, Darrell Taylor here. Taylor's looking good in that Skittles, that liveried SR10, which again does fit the car very well, to be fair. I'm quite impressed with that. It looks absolutely amazing. Damien G here from Radsport Sim Racing Team. teamed up with Gary Truby in other series as well. They're both from the same team, formerly of BSR. It's going to be interesting to see how he can defend away. But one of the things we have got, and we haven't really picked up on it, is we've got Paul Clark and George Gonzaga up in 4th and 5th place. Paul Clark, as we know, is, how can I put it, stubborn in his defence. Doesn't allow many people through, Ewan, does he? And generally holds on to the positions where he is and where he finishes.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's too big of a surprise to see him up here, to be honest, inside the top 5, because he is 5th in the championship standings at the moment. And one of those big names, of course, in front of him in the championship, John McCutcheon's well behind him at the moment, so you'd certainly expect him to be in that 4th place. Mike Boosson not here today as well. Dan Webster behind him as well. Yeah, it's another good performance from Clark, but not out of the ordinary at all. We're seeing Gonzaga up there, though, inside the top 5. That is a great performance from him, because obviously relatively new to the league. I think this is 4th round now. I thought it was 3rd, 4th round that he's been able to do this season. And yeah, good to see him inside the top 5 now. But there'll be really heated battles for those last places inside the top 5 by the looks of things.
Yeah, and I think the pit stops are going to play an absolute massive part here. Damien G, David Ward, Darrell Taylor battling away. David Ward in the pink, Taylor in the Skittles livery, and then we've got the Tiger team of David Rolliston behind him. Good evening, Mr. Colin Wynn. I hope you are well. Thank you so much for joining us. I say well, but you're in your sick bed currently, so get well soon there, buddy. And we'll hopefully see you back on track. Oh, G! Oh. Damien G, David Rolliston, what is going on?
Oh, Damien G went off on his own through turn 1 and 2, and then I think David Rolliston, trying to react to that, slowing down, might have got hit around by one of the wards.
Yeah, let's have a look back and see on that one.
Let's see. But David Rolliston was certainly helped into that spin. I'm very sure of that. Although Damien G's was, oh no, sorry, it was a slowing down in front of him. He went into the back of that caused the spin, not the other way round. So it was just almost avoiding action in terms of the braking there. Just went around, but yeah, I'm very sure Damien G just lost that on his own, unfortunately.
Yeah, it did, and that put Damien G battling away with David Rolliston down in 13th and 14th. George Gonzaga is under pressure from Dan Webster here. How long will this one last? Will be the question. We know Webster is ceremoniously quick. Gonzaga runs wide in the last turn. That's going to be Webster through and on his bike now, trying to catch up with a very stoutly defence of Mr. Paul Clark. Gonzaga is trying to come back on the inside line. He's not going to make it round this time, though. So I think that one's going to have to see how that one pans out now. Watch Dan Webster close up to Paul Clark. Darrell Taylor and David Ward are still mixed up close together. Lap 6 of 29. This is a battle that could rumble on for the next 23 laps.
I think that's the thing about these races, is that the battles that we do get could well carry on for quite some time, although I don't tend to see that normally going on for too long in the other format, really, because the races are so short comparatively. But we'll see. It just depends how it pans out, really. Darrell Taylor might just have the edge here. It's just a case of finding a way through now, and as the race is settling down, we'll really get a view as to how easy or difficult it is to overtake on this circuit.
Yeah, we've got another battle behind with Phil Glover and Seth Brown. We have got Phil in the waiting booth, as we always do, for a chat. Not entirely sure where we can get him in on this one, maybe after the left-hander of turn 1. But this is on board with Darrell Taylor as we go around now. Turn 13, ran a long right-hander of 14. Pit lane entrance is on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, just there. So for them, they've got to be careful on when they are pitting. There's a gap of about, coming back to Paul Clark here with Dan Webster, that gap is below half a second. Simon Edwards has got his gap. He must have had enough. He's lost. He was 1 point something out in front. He's now got Maxwell less than 7 tenths behind him there, Ewan. That's a bit strange.
Well, I'm not sure he's made a mistake here, really. I just think he's been reeled in by Luke Maxwell. Let's not forget that there was a gap created basically entirely by lap 1 that I think Maxwell has had to work quite hard to close, really. So I think that's been all natural, really. Maxwell just closing in, but I am surprised. Based on the practice times, I thought Simon Edwards was going to take pole and take a lights to flag win as well, but Luke Maxwell was showing that it might be a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, I'm wondering though as well. Maybe Maxwell hasn't shown up that he's got. Edwards hasn't shown up. He's gone off track, but he might have had a slowdown that we haven't seen, and that's where that gap of 2.5 seconds. I think it was really literally probably where it was about out at. Was how he's managed to get it down to about 6/10. I suppose we can only but presume, but I'm guessing it may have had something to do with that, I think, because the lap times, the last lap times 1:15.7, 1:15.5, so there's only 2 attempts, and you know, we've only had 8 laps, so by the end of lap 1 it was like 1.3 ahead, so I'm struggling to see that Maxwell's pulled in that amount of time over that period of short laps, considering he's only making 2 attempts. But Webster and Clark here are on this run down now into turn 3 and 4. Dan Webster is through. Paul Clark not so stoutly defence on that one, and he is through. Darrell Taylor still chasing down David Ward, but I think that's possibly that we could put it down to you, and he might have had a slowdown that we didn't see.
I'm still not entirely sure. It's entirely possible. Oh dear me, David Ward all out of shape, and that's all the invitation that Darrell Taylor needed to go through. Yeah, it could have been a slowdown, but just as we've seen there with Maxwell losing a bit of time by the looks of things, it could have just been a mistake like that, I suppose, or it could have been a natural closing of the gap. It's hard to really know, but we thought there that we might get a leading battle between those two. Looks like we're going to have to wait a little bit longer if indeed we do get one, but Maxwell really does need to beat Simon Edwards really in this race. Maxwell has a lot more pressure on him in terms of drop weeks. He didn't actually attend one of the rounds, and obviously had some bad luck in some of the others as well, so really does need a good race. There's more pressure on him than there is likes of Simon Edwards and John McCutcheon.
Do you think though that the likes of Dan Webster really kind of feels pressure? Paul, you know what I mean, if you get what I mean? It's looking like Paul Clark has got past. No, he's not. My timing tower just went a little bit skew-whiffy there. Do these guys feel pressure, do you think? Do you think Dan Webster's got into tonight and gone, I've got to go and do something special? You know, I've had a few bad weeks. I've got to go and do it. Do you think they feel this pressure? Because surely these guys are used to it by now, right?
Yeah, you think so. It's hard to know, and I do think that Simon Edwards is probably almost too experienced to really feel that and feel under pressure. He has won this championship 4 times now, and knows exactly what he's doing. So you know it'll be difficult, I think, for him to really feel under pressure. But you never really know. That's what Maxwell's got to do. He's got to try and force that on him really, and try and get Edwards to make a mistake, which we've seen him. We're hypothesising a little bit that he might have done already in this race. Obviously, we don't know for sure, but there may have been a mistake earlier on from Simon Edwards somewhere that we didn't see, so yeah, you never really know, but I think that's Luke Maxwell's job to just try and get in the mirrors as much as possible, try and apply the pressure and try and make him make a mistake really, but I don't think he will be feeling too much pressure.
No, the gap is down at 1.2 up front as well. We are on board with Seth Brown, who's trying to chase down Phil Glover. Jamie Bird, obviously, as we know, with Jamie, we got caught up in the James Child incident. I wouldn't mind, but both of them are from the same team as well, so that's a little bit unfortunate. I'm surprised they're not in. I'm guessing they might have been in the same voice chat somewhere, but they're not in a voice chat here. But yeah, they're both guys from Racing 86. They had it coming together. Started off by Child, and then Bird just come around the corner into him, and well, he was there, wasn't he, really? So, which is a bit of a shame. But Jamie Bird is battling away with Damien G here, seeing how he gets on. And maybe he might be able to climb up and make some places through the pit stop and go from there. But for a minute, for Jamie Bird, it is Damien G. We've got 18 laps remaining here. And David Rollison and John McCutcheon have both been in the pits, and they're both at the back of the field. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I've got to be honest. Normally, when I watch John in an endurance, we're normally running for 90 minutes. He makes an early pit stop, fills right the way up to the top, and makes it through. But Damien G is also gone into the pits as well, and we're going to have a look at just how long he's got to come through. He's going to be coming under there. He's down on the speed limit already, and he's just kind of trickling down the pit lane. So he's lost a good 20 seconds plus at the moment. and it was 23 seconds just for him to stop. So I think pit strategy could play a vital part here tonight with the length of that pit lane.
Yeah, it is going to be important, and Jamie G and David Rolleston, I think, have definitely made pit stops that are going to see them get to the end of the race. I'm not so sure about John McCutcheon, really. I don't really know what the limitations are in terms of fuel, because this is 75% longer than the official series races.
66% fuel.
Yeah, exactly. I did think it was limited fuel. We don't have, we're not exactly running out of fuel by the end of the at the end of the normal races in our racing. So it would suggest to me that with that 66% fuel that you can't actually do this race all on one tank of fuel and pit at the end of lap one. You might be able to, but given what we've heard previously, we've gotten information such as pit windows in the past in these races. I know we got one for Montreal for round 2. We've got a pit window, and that basically suggests the earliest pit stop that you can make and get to the end, suggesting that you can't do all the race, and that suggests that I think John McCutcheon might have to come into pit lane again.
Yeah, but so for John, I think it would have been how far he got up the grid before he has to go in again. Is that going to be a question? The problem is he doesn't look like, with everybody else at the moment, it doesn't look like he's gaining massive amounts of time. But Paul Crabb and Dan Webster here battling away for third and fourth. We've got Darrell Taylor in a battle and Seth Brown. We will try and pick up on these guys as well, because Darrell Taylor battle looks a little bit closer as he's battling with Robert Woodward in the pink cars. We've got 3 pink cars on the grid tonight. Robert Woodward here from Racing Pointless. We've got John McCutcheon as well, and David Ward just to top it off. You can see David in the background there as well. But Darrell Taylor doing an absolute stellar job, up 2 into 8th place. David Ward up 7 at the moment as well. So all in all, doing amazing jobs here on lap 13. They are side by side. Not this time. I don't think this is going to be a long battle here. I think Darrell Taylor is looking very racy tonight. Ewan?
He certainly is. We've seen that with his battle with David Ward, just ended up forcing a mistake really going through. So yeah, he certainly seems to be on the move. He's obviously positive on the day in terms of grid position versus where he is now. And looking to make that even more positive as well with an overtake on Robert Woodward, but it is turning out to be fairly tricky to overtake. Taylor found it a little bit difficult on the back of Ward, and it looks like he is struggling for places to go through here as well, as they all make their way around the final corner and onto the front straight. It's very difficult to get a run out of there really when you're following someone else, and turn 1 is not a big braking zone at all here either. Going side by side is not particularly ideal. You can just see how quick it is. It's not actually that slow of a corner, so you can't really get down the inside into turn 1. Has Taylor got a nicer exit off of here and off of turn 2 to maybe go down the inside to 3? Well, he's got a better exit, but it's not good enough, and so it is proving to be pretty difficult to overtake for Darrell Taylor at the moment.
No, I think Seth Brown is seeing that same issue at the moment as he's, I would say, stuck up behind the back of Phil Glover, but that's not doing Phil Glover any detrimental effect. Phil is doing a stellar job as well. He's currently in 10th place. We will try and have a chat with him, maybe see if we can catch him on the pit lane entrance and drag him in really, really quickly. But from there, Phil is battling away with Seth Brown currently at the moment. George Gonzaga, Robert Woodward, that time's coming down between the two for the battle for 6th and 7th. You see it on the left-hand side there. Currently as well, John McCutcheon's back in the pits.
Yeah, I thought he might be. I thought he might have to because of the fuel situation. So I'm afraid it's going to be probably the 17th place finish, whatever happens to John McCutcheon today, which is a real shame for him, really. Only 14 points, and I'm very confident, or pretty confident, that by the end of the season he'll end up dropping this round, I would imagine, because, unless he misses 3 others, I suppose. He could end up dropping this round, to be honest, because this is not where we usually see him.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we're going to be looking at. Is on his way out now.
Did he even stop then? Or was that just very short?
44 seconds. He looked like he did stop, and then he's gone again.
Okay.
His pit stop time was 8.5. Was about 8.5 seconds.
Yeah.
So,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, not drastically long, but Phil Glover does look like he's opening up a bit of a gap over Seth Brown now. The cars are getting very spread out. Maxwell was close to Edwards at one point. It was down to 4 tenths and then went back out again to 1.6 as it's sitting currently at the moment, but they haven't pitted. Darrell Taylor's in the pits, and he's been in the pits for about 57 seconds as well. So that looks like it's going to be a long old pit stop for Darrell Taylor. But Phil Glover and Seth Brown are still battling it away. And I think pit stops are going to play a massive part, as it has for Taylor, as he's dropped all the way down into 6th place. Dan Webster's in the pits as well. See how far he can go as well, when I can sort out what I want. There you go. So Dan Webster dropping down the order now, 9th, 10th. Do we think, I'm just having a philosophy, having a little bit of a theory here, and it might not be right, but I'm wondering if the people that take the latest possible time for their pits might actually benefit a little bit more than the people who have taken an earlier one, because David Rolleston here is coming round turn 10. He's next up for Dan Webster. Webster's managed to get out in front of Rolleston, which is great. But he's got Martina Ward up the road. She's got 19-second gap. If we go to Simon Edwards, he's got a nearly just under probably about a minute and a bit. I don't know if the people taking late pit stops are going to benefit more, to be honest.
Well, normally, especially in a longer race, the later you pit is better, but that theory only works if everybody comes in when their tank is dry. So if everybody does that, then the later you stop, the less laps you have to put into the end of the race, and so the shorter your pit stops will be, and so that would work. But in a race like this, where the pit stop is a lot more strategical rather than sort of logical, you know, it's not an endurance race that we've been running for 6 hours or something, where everybody's just pitting when they run out of fuel at the end of every hour. It's a lot more strategical and tactical in that sense. So I don't think that necessarily the later you pit, the better, but it just depends. I think some of the early pit stops were partly down to damage, and that will add a bit of pit stop time anyway to you, and that maybe that's why you've fallen back so much. But it just seems that this pit lane is really, really long and really slow as well. So the drivers are losing a lot of time making a pit stop, and that's making it look a bit unusual sometimes.
The thing is, they can't seem to be able to go zooming in because they've got that tight right-hander on entrance. You know, these guys have gone round again. We're on board with Mr. Paul Clark, seeing how he gets on. I don't think Paul Crabb's going to be diving in this time around. He isn't. What about Paul Clark? Is he going to be coming in? No, because there's the entrance start there. David Ward has done a stellar job. He's up 11 places at the moment with Robert Woodward, Phil Glover behind him. So these guys are battling it out on track there as well. Martina Ward is still stopped in the pits. She's been in there for 1 minute 17, and Darrell Taylor was in there for 1:23. Massive difference in pit stop times.
Yeah, some very long stops, and this is where damage has definitely come into it. Because, well, I'm pretty sure that's Martina Ward's only stop, but she still found herself behind John McCutcheon, who's made 2. So that kind of says it all, really. Yeah, there's been some very long stops. And that's how Dan Webster's so far in front of Rolleston as well. That was all very close. And this is going to be awkward into the S's as well. But it looks like Phil Glover and Seth Brown have made their way through.
Yeah, Robert Woodward ran wide in 10. It was earlier than that. It was round in 2 and 3 and 4. And it looked like he had a slowdown coming out the entrance of 4, therefore bringing into play Phil Glover and Seth Brown, and these guys kind of had to step, well, almost on the brakes just to try and avoid him, but that has brought Mr. Brown right back behind Mr. Glover here this evening, and this little battle here for 6th and 7th is going off rather nicely. It's brewing to be somewhat of an exciting battle through this mid part of the race.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's the closest one up towards the front that we're getting right now. Phil Glover not with the best exit off the final corner, just seems to be struggling in a straight line a little bit there. Seth Brown to the outside, Glover sends it to the inside there and goes too deep on the brakes. Now Brown should have a better exit off of turn 2, but just understeers a little bit as he gets the power on, and now might not be close enough. We'll see if he does just about have enough. He's got more straight line speed, and so will be to the inside of Glover now, who does have more cornering speed here, but on the outside line of 3 and 4, it's very difficult to do anything there, and so Seth Brown is up to 6th place. And that will basically happen because of turn number 1, where Phil Glover just outbroke himself and went a little bit wide.
Yeah, that's a shame, you know, because Phil was doing rather well in his stoutly defence there. I'm not going to lie, he was having quite a good race for himself on that one, and as you say, one little easy slip of concentration and you're already done. Damien G, Jamie Bird, George Gonzaga further down the order. This is for 11th, 12th and 13th position respectively. These guys flying along quite nicely. Everybody up until Robert Woodward in 8th have pitted behind them. Everybody in front haven't. So there's still the front 8 have still got to pit here, and they've only got 9 laps remaining to do it. What do we think now? Because we're not, the window's kind of almost closing. Oh, Jamie Bird goes wide there as well. That's going to bring Damien G into it. The window's almost closing for these guys to a degree now on how much fuel they must have left, because they only had 66%, so they must be got to be nearly coming to the end of that already, aren't they? I would have thought.
Yeah, you'd think so. Just try to quite work out where we'd normally be with that. I mean, yeah, normally at this point we are past halfway. Got to be running short of fuel at some point. Simon Edwards is in now. I wouldn't have thought he would come in too far before the end of his fuel run. I'd be surprised if he's coming with any fuel on board now. So we've got to be getting towards that stage, but we do still have quite a lot of drivers to come in. The top 8 still yet to come in. As it's not. It's Paul Crabb again. Sorry, for the first time. There's some cars mixed up at the moment. There's some cars a lap down because some cars have stopped and some haven't. But this is why pit stops are taking so long. It's so slow, and not a short pit lane either.
30 miles an hour. We feel like we've been going for an age.
Yeah, this is why so many drivers have found themselves a lap down, and that's why it's so confusing at the moment. That's why, in my mind, pitting early or late doesn't really matter, because they've ended up in traffic one way or another. If you pit early, you've ended up in the leaders' traffic, and you know, blue flags. And if you stayed out, then you've ended up lapping cars. So it's near as makes no difference to me, really, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the point here with David Rolleston. Paul Clark is on his way out, stayed in front of Robert Woodward. Did lose a position to Dan Webster. Simon Edwards is still in 3rd. Maxwell is now into the pits. So it's going to be whereabouts David Ward and this man, Simon Edwards, will be as we're here on lap 21. Simon Edwards currently coming around turn 12. Maxwell still in. It's looking like he could be in for about another 20 seconds. Here comes Edwards. I think it's going to be job done here. I think Edwards is going to take the lead as David Ward goes in as well. We're looking on the left-hand side of your screen.
Well, he's going. Maxwell's going. Well, he's going slowly, but he's going, and yeah, you're right. Edwards is going to just about do it, although Maxwell can cut out turn 1 here, and it is going to be very close. The 1 lap longer there from Maxwell has shortened his pit stop ever so slightly, and now we really do have a race on.
Yeah, it's brought us down into 3 tenths after that pit stop. What a play from Maxwell. Did an absolute stellar job on that one. And the pit stop times, mind you, Maxwell was actually in the pit stop longer than Edwards, but his pit stop time was longer as well, 8.35 seconds. So he was actually in there longer than Simon Edwards. But as you say, that 1 lap extra seemed to have done him a world of good.
He did that 1 lap, of course, on lighter fuel than Edwards would have done, having just filled up to go to the end. I know it's a few kilos here or there, but it will have made a little bit of a difference. I'm surprised it made a whole second's worth of a difference, given the gaps before versus now. But otherwise, I guess a strong in-lap from Maxwell, maybe a mistake on the out-lap from Edwards. All of those possibilities could very well be true. It all doesn't matter now. It's basically a race between the two of them. And it's going to be a good one as well. They've got a lot of time to play around here. They've got a big space behind them.
Yeah, I'm surprised Maxwell didn't jump into that toe. Seems a very bizarre manoeuvre. I would have thought he would have gone across the track with Simon Edwards there to try and stay, as they say, every little helps. But yeah, I thought Maxwell might stay there, but the gap has come down to 2.2 tenths here already. And I think it's going to be a good run up for these last 6 laps here with Luke Maxwell and Simon Edwards. Maxwell's closer now than he was before the pits, and I think the run in general now is going to be straight sprint to the line. Who is going to be faster? If your life depended on it, Ewan, who would you go for now?
I think I would go for Edwards controlling this one and staying in front. Track position is proving to be quite important at this circuit. It is proving to be quite difficult to overtake, and that's not exactly a big shock. But Simon Edwards has been in this position so many times before. He's been in this position quite a lot with Luke Maxwell over the last 3 seasons. Let's not forget that in season 3 of 2022, he did lose out on the championship. His winning streak of championships was broken by the man in second place right now, so he knows exactly how to deal with him. These two will know how to deal with each other. And as I say, Edwards has been in this position so many times before. Track position proving to be so important. I think he is going to hold on from the front here, but Maxwell isn't going to let him get away lightly with the win.
No, I think it's definitely going to be Maxwell's going to have a good old go. I think 1:16.21, 1:16.22. So it just goes to show how close these guys are on track, and whether or not Luke Maxwell or Simon Edwards will take this. This is going to, oh God, this is going to get spicy. I think this is going to get spicy here with about 5.5 laps remaining. Ewan ready to go. Damien G has gone past James Child further down the order. So see how that one pans out. I've got, no, come, stop, please stop. What are you doing?
Why? Problems.
Yeah, there we go. It's,
there we are.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's what we were looking for.
Yeah,
but
not entirely sure.
But yeah, still just 5 laps to go, and it is going to be really, really hard for Maxwell to do anything here. We were speaking about pressure and Simon Edwards and whether it really gets to him. So concluding that it probably doesn't really at this stage, but he's got to try his best to get in the mirrors as much as possible as Luke Maxwell and try and get close, but it's even quite difficult to follow really, and even get close enough to apply that kind of pressure. Still a couple of car lengths between them, and there just isn't really a straight long enough for him to do anything about it at the moment.
No, he's going to have to be tucked up right behind him on turn 13 going into 14, I think, for Luke Maxwell to have any real chance of that run down into turn 1. It looks like G and Child are having a little bit of a ding-dong. G, Child and Bird. Damien G there climbing all over the back of Jamie Bird. Obviously Bird and Child did have that coming together on lap 2. It's going to be interesting to see how this one pans out, whether or not G's going to be close enough. He seems to have a run out the final corner. Can Damien G, I think he's going to be too far back. It just doesn't look long enough on that straight, does it, for them to make a difference? They've got this one now, that if G can hook up the exit, he might be able to get him going down into 3 and 4, but there just doesn't seem one long enough for them to make that difference.
No, exactly. There's 2 kind of medium length straights here with a home straight, and then between 2 and 3. But yeah, it's just not long enough really. And I think the corners after the straights as well don't help. Turn 1 is not actually that slow. It's not that tight of a corner. You really end up slowing down for turn 2, but you've single filed out by that point because of turn 1, so that's not very useful. And turn 3 really is almost no braking zone at all. Obviously you are on the brakes a little bit, but it's not like a proper hairpin. It swings around on itself, but it's not a proper hairpin. You have to risk it somewhere else. And that was a bit of a dive from James Child.
Yeah.
To try and get down the inside of Damien G, and it's still side by side between them.
Yeah, Bird went very slow in front of G and Child there, and literally those two almost had to hit the brakes, and G and Child are going to be coming out of this corner. Child is in front. He got him on the exit of 14, So James Child is now up into 13th place. The gap is still down 3/10 to the cars in front as well. The front two of Simon Edwards and Luke Maxwell. And they are coming up to actually lap this group. Well, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, this is where things could maybe open up for Luke Maxwell, and he'll be certainly hoping that it does. I mean, drivers obviously in this league very respectful of each other. We were mentioning that after the last round, how respectful they are of each other post-race and in the race as well. You can see now with Darrell Taylor there, he made a mistake of his own, but still very respectful to the two leaders, and I think the top three will be very respectful to them as well. So despite the fact they might be going through these lap cars, it might make no difference at all given the way that the people drive here. There's no criticism really. We obviously like the respectful racing, but I think Luke Maxwell would rather things were shaken up a little bit by an unpredictable moment, which there may well still be.
I'm worried about these guys, you know. There was a big puff of smoke here as well. Damien G is looking on the inside. He's looking to come back through as well. So it's going to be how Simon Edwards deals with the battling cars in front. Is G just going to... Well, he's going to stay to the surely he is. Simon Edwards is going to use his best of his ability. G and Child move out the way. So that's basically 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, all lapped currently at the moment. And now these guys have got to go again because in front of them is Jamie Bird as well. So it shows how well these two have got this hooked up to be lapping cars towards the end of the race.
Yeah, it does show that this circuit obviously very short as well. Just over a minute and a quarter here for this race. But yeah, not least the talent of these two. Let's not forget that outside the top five, Paul Clark at the moment, over half a minute down on these two right now. So it certainly is the talent of these two as well as the short circuit that's meant we've only got now 11 cars on the lead lap, and it looks like that's the way we're going to finish this race as well, with 11 cars on the lead lap. But this is what these endurance format races do provide. A bit of a longer one, a bit more of a slower one, a race that unfolds throughout. But in the end, a leading battle that's struggling to get going because Luke Maxwell just can't get quick enough in the right places, can't really get into the mirrors of Simon Edwards, and things really falling apart a little bit on that penultimate lap, allowing the gap to grow over a second.
Yeah, we are on the final lap now as well. Child and Bird. We've seen this before. So look at that, James Child has made that better run out of turn one. Jamie Bird, I would say, was going to let him go back through, but maybe not. As they come around 3 and 4, there's an off car in turn 17. That was Martina Ward there as well, but Jamie Bird, Martina Ward is still off in 17. Round in turn 12, sorry. We can have a look back and see what happened to Martina.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's not really been her day.
No, we could just call the end of it.
Started off in qualifying, of course, with a mistake earlier on, and it's gone from bad to worse from there, unfortunately. But yeah, happily gone a lot better for Simon Edwards out front.
Yeah, Edwards is coming round turn 12, 13, 14, and he's now going to come and take this victory. Maxwell will be in second place. Simon Edwards takes the win. Luke Maxwell in second. Dan Webster, mind you, third place, battled his way back through. Not bad at all there for Dan Webster, considering after lap one he was dropping, well, he went all the way to the back, didn't he, after his spin in turn one, to be honest. So, there we go. Then we've got Paul Crabb will be coming across the line in fourth. The cars are quite spread out at the moment, so bear with us. Paul Crabb there, Mr. Paul Clark in fifth place. David Ward in sixth. And then we've got Robert Woodward and Phil Glover coming in there as well in seventh and eighth place. Phil got eighth after dropping off Seth Brown. So there we go. Seth Brown and David Rolliston having a battle down into the line. It's going to be Brown there, I think. It's going to got that one. So it's just George Gonzaga ready to go So, and George Gonzaga comes across the line. Right, we can bring you up the race results. And it's Simon Edwards in first place, Luke Maxwell in second, Dan Webster in third, Paul Crabb fourth, Paul Clark in fifth, David Ward sixth, Robert Woodward seventh, Phil Glover eighth, David Rolliston ninth, George Gonzaga in 10th, Seth Brown in 11th, James Child 12th, Damien G 13th, Darryl Taylor 14th, John McCutchinson down in 15th place, Jamie Bird in 16th, Martina Ward 17th, and the final man on which didn't actually take the start was David Beasley down in 18th place. He took it. Simon Edwards took it. There was a mistake in there from Luke Maxwell, Ewan, and Simon Edwards took the victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end, it wasn't really too difficult for him. Of course, the two of them had tremendous pace all day long. But all Simon Edwards had to do really was stay on the racing line there. And Luke Maxwell wasn't going to be able to do anything. You saw, by the way, that Maxwell fell away by a second or two towards the end, that he actually did throw everything at that one, even though it didn't look like it. He didn't really it didn't look like he even made a move there. He still threw everything at it. But even that wasn't enough by the end. Maxwell will have to settle for second, and Simon Edwards will extend his championship lead from now on. With that race result, another victory for him. His first of the season, of course, which seems remarkable, but it is.
Yeah, so let's bring in Mr. Phil Glover and have a quick chat with Phil. Good evening, Phil. How are you?
Very well, thanks. And yourself?
Not too bad, mate. That wasn't a bad race for you. 8th place all in all.
Yeah, not bad at all, really, was it? It was hard work practicing. It's a difficult track because you get a lot of off tracks, but yeah, once you get into the flow, I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, and a lot of slowdowns as well, isn't it, Phil? Did you get away with any slowdowns this evening?
I did have one slowdown, and there was I can't remember who was on my tail, but I managed to lose the slowdown round the corner. I managed to hang on to that place.
I'm going to probably guess it was Seth Brown, as you two seem to be together for pretty much 75%.
I think it probably was.
Yeah, 75% of the race, I think. So you guys were close together throughout. So, an absolute stellar job from you, Phil. Up one from your grid slot. 8th place. Are you looking forward to next week? Because we're at Catalonia.
I look forward to every week, but I couldn't say it's one of my greatest tracks. But I think I've got that one as well. So hopefully I'll be there next week.
Awesome, Phil. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before you leave the booth this evening?
Well, to you guys, and also one of my friends is supposed to be watching tonight. So a call out to Roy.
Okay, well, Roy, if you're here, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us. But Phil, we look forward to having a chat with you next week, buddy. You take care and have a good one.
And you, James. See you next week.
See you later. All right, let's have a chat with Mr. Luke Maxwell. Good evening, Luke. How are you, sir?
Evening, James. Yes, much better than last week.
Yeah, of course it was. Second place, barnstorming in lap for your pit there, mate, to be honest, because that brought you down almost a second within Simon Edwards, got down to about 3/10.
Yeah, I think a couple of unfortunate slowdowns at inopportune times there, but I thought actually I'm right up on him with the pits. I'm surprised he pitted when he did, but actually I ran out of fuel just going into the pits, so that cost me probably a good chunk that I saved, I guess, in the in lap. So unfortunately, if I'd saved a little bit more earlier on, we'd have been laughing, I think. But sadly that was the way it was. And then just at the end there, I was hoping we might get a bit of fun in the back markers and a chance to get by. But yeah, it's a very, very hard track to get by. Simon was lightning in practice as well. So did the best I could, I think, today.
Yeah, and I think that's all you can ask for from yourself as well. If you put maximum effort in to try and catch Simon Edwards. And at one point, we thought you did, because the gap kept coming down. It was coming down below half a second, and then it was going back out to 1.6, and then it was coming back down again, And it was a very sort of springboky time, I think, to be honest, because it was up and down like an absolute trooper.
Yeah, every time I got up behind him, there was a slowdown. So yeah, I think it was a bit unlucky. I think one point we got caught in the back markers, and I had to cut an early line into the turn because I couldn't go as wide as I wanted, and then caught a slowdown there, and then managed to catch up before the pits, and then lost it, with another slowdown right at the end. So yeah, it was one of those things. I'm happy though, to be honest. It's an improvement, so that's the direction I want to go in.
Well, onwards and upwards and off to Spain we go at Catalonia next week. Luke, any opinions?
Well, we'll see. No, again, I used to, whenever I drove there, I always used to spin. So let's wait and see what happens.
I love my spinning around music by Kylie Minogue, all set up ready for you then, mate. But Luke,
Yeah,
anybody you want to give a shout out to before you leave the booth this evening?
Just the guys running the league, top job. It's a great league, and hopefully we can get more people interested. It's good fun.
Yeah, definitely is there as well. But Luke, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll look forward to seeing what you can do next week in Spain.
Cheers, guys. Yeah,
Take care.
all the best.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Dan Webster in the booth before we catch up with our Victor this evening. Dan, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks, chaps. How are you?
Wonderful. Not the greatest turn one.
No, that was quite poor, wasn't it?
I tell you
I made
one
a
thing,
mess
though.
of
Yeah, but you got an absolute barnstorming start. I was well impressed with the
Yeah.
start.
My starts are usually pretty good. I was banking on that because I made a mess of qualifying as well.
Yeah, you got an absolute storming start and then a spin into turn one. But you battled your way back through to third place overall. That's not a bad comeback considering where you was after the first turn.
No, very good. I mean, that's probably where I would have finished without the spin. So, yeah, not bad at all.
Without that spin, though, where do you reckon you might have been?
Probably third, to be honest, because it's a very, very tricky track to overtake when you've got similar pace. And I think Simon and Luke and I had pretty similar pace.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of difference, to be honest. You had the second best time with a 1:15.68. Luke was fastest on 1:15.55. Edwards there on a 1:15.75. So as you say, not a lot between the three of you at all. But all in all, Luke, not a bad evening of racing. We go off to Spain next week as well. But thank you so much for joining me in the booth. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before you go?
Yeah, I have to give a shout out to my other half because she complained last week that I never give her a shout out.
Did she watch it back or is she watching it live?
She might be watching it live. I'll probably hear her laughing in a minute.
Oh, okay. Well, good evening to you. Is it Mrs. Webster?
Almost, yeah.
Almost. Oh, well, practically. You're like me and my partner, you know what I mean? Long time, practically. So, good evening, Mr. Webster's wife-to-be, hopefully. So, there we go. Well done, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having a chat with you next week, maybe in Catalonia.
Hopefully. Cheers, guys.
Take care. So, that was Dan Webster in the booth. So, let's have a chat with your Victor this evening, Mr. Simon Edwards, who is sat there patiently waiting. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, young sir?
I'm relieved after that. I don't know where my pace went from practice, but, lucky start and hard to overtake track. No slowdowns. I just looked into another one, I think, really.
Well, you did well then, because Luke did get slowdowns. Every time he got close to you, he copped a slowdown, he said. So, as I said, because the time was bouncing out, it was out at 1.6, then it was back down to 4/10, then back out again, and then back down again, and then he was close coming out of the pits as well, and then he was even closer down to 2/10, and then he copped another slowdown towards the end of the race. So, yeah.
Yeah, I did notice. I could see him dropping back, and I didn't make any chuckling noises or anything. I was thinking it was relief, to be honest with you, because I think if he got a good run at me out the last corner, I probably wouldn't have fought it too hard into the first corner because I've no idea how to go too wide through there.
No, I don't either. And as we saw from Dan Webster on turn one, it didn't work out too well there either. But look, a win is a win. Take it, put it in your pocket, say thank you very much. Jump on your plane because we're off to Spain next week for Catalonia. Now, what's your opinions? I'm not a great lover of the circuit myself to drive round, but that's because I'm not, amazing. But what about yourself? Do you love it or hate it?
You're not going to speak to me again because I love the chicane version. Where you get the chicane at the end?
Yeah.
I love that chicane. It's just setting up for it just makes the lap for me. It's like you, the rest of it's a bit and a bit annoying. But if you put the chicane in, it sort of it changes the character of the lap, if you like. Yeah. And I prefer that than taking the wide corner, the MotoGP corner.
No, well, you've got the chicane, Simon.
There you go. So I'll be happy. So that means I'm going to crash at the chicane. You know that now.
All right. Well, I'll keep an eye on you next week, specifically just for that. And if I don't see that, hey, we'll have a chat after, and I'll congratulate you on not crashing. But Simon, thank you so much for joining me in the booth. Anybody, as always, do you want to give a shout out to before you depart this evening?
I'm going to give shout out to my 2 new little kittens, 9 weeks old.
Do they have names, or are we just going to call them kittens?
They do. One's called Smokey.
Yeah.
They were given to us by a neighbour because they're moving and they found them. And he called the other one Bandit, but we didn't feel that was right, so we called him Ninja, and he's Ginger.
Well, James and Ewan are quite good names,
Yeah.
Just, I don't mind. I don't mind being a cat, Ewan. Every time Simon calls your name around his house, how do you feel about that?
I don't know if it's a cat's name, really, is it? But I don't know.
Well, there we go, Simon. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your victory. And I'll look forward to seeing you crashing in the chicane next week in Catalonia.
Thank you. I'll take that as a break a leg. Thank you.
Take care, mate. Bye. Bye. Well, they all seem upbeat, don't they, really? You know what I mean? They all seem to be doing rather well and seem to be enjoying the fact that they've done the race. So, we can take positives from it as well this evening because everybody seems quite happy. You know what I mean? No real grumbles, no real moans, and that was it.
Yeah, I think that's the story we get from most rounds, to be honest. People seem to be pretty happy either way. The general consensus, though, from this circuit, really, or my judgment of it anyway, is that it does look like a fun circuit to drive, but maybe only on your own. In terms of passing the cars, it's very, very difficult to actually do that. Because, as we explained during the race, the straights just aren't long enough. The corners after the straights aren't quite slow enough for you to really make a move reliably. We didn't really see many, and as I said, Maxwell threw everything at that. I know he said he made a couple of mistakes with the slowdowns, but I'm not convinced that even if we remove them, that he would have got any closer to Simon Edwards, really. So, a decent race, but and a good experiment on a new circuit as well. It's a new circuit for me anyway. So it was nice to go to it, and we may see a bit of a similar race at Catalonia as well in 1 week's time. I know we've got the sprint and feature format back again. But it's not exactly a wildly easy circuit to overtake on there either. So maybe that's a bit of an insight to what we're going to see next week as well.
Yeah, definitely. There goes. It's going to be an exciting one. As I say, maybe not as much passing as we would have hoped for, but we can live and learn and see how these guys got on. So what have we got coming up this week on the JPB YouTube channel? Well, later on this evening, around about 1:45 in the morning, if you are in the UK, 8:30, give or take Eastern. If you're in the US, we do have the second round of the Radical Sim Racing US Amateur Pros, and again, that is from Rudskogen. We've got another 2 races in the Sim Racing Amateur Pros European Division from Rudskogen as well tomorrow evening. They start at 7:45. Then we've got the SRL at 10:15, round 5 of the GT4 from the Hungaro Ring. Now, I am off to the sunny world of Birmingham on Saturday for the Autosports International show up there. But we do have races going off as well. We've got the Revival AC League. Now, if you haven't seen this, they go off from Silverstone. They are the old Revival Formula cars. So definitely come and check them out because that's going to be absolutely incredible. We've also got the R Factor CMS League starting on Saturday Saturday as well, and that's the historic. So tune in for that one as well, because that's going to be somewhat amazing. And then on Sunday at 1 a.m. we got the LSRL GT3 round 2 kicking off there as well. So lots to look forward to this weekend and these coming few days here on the JPB YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the bells for notifications, and give the video a big old thumbs up. But I think, guys, that rounds out tonight's broadcast. From myself and Ewan O'Leary, take care, have a great week, and you never know, we might see you on the track sometime. Good night.